Okay, good morning. Welcome to the 2022 Spring Local Election Candidates Forum for the Village Trustee position on the McFarland Village Board. My name is Joe Charette. I am the Executive Director for the McFarland Chamber of Commerce, and I will be your moderator for our event today. This event is an opportunity for candidates to discuss a wide range of topics important to them in this community, and a chance for voters to get to know more about you. Thank you to the Communications and Technology Department for broadcasting this event. Obviously, this is live on all our channels, and it will also be recorded to watch at a future date on the McFarland YouTube's channel or McFarland Cable's website, mcfarlandcable.com. As a reminder, Election Day is scheduled for Tuesday, April 5th, with the polls open at the McFarland Municipal Center from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Absentee voting in person and by mail 2 weeks prior to the election. Please consult mcfarland.wi.us/elections for more information. Now, for today's event, each candidate will be provided an opportunity to introduce themselves before we begin the questions portion of the event. There are 8 questions in total that will be asked of the candidates. At the conclusion of the question period, each candidate will be provided a chance for closing remarks. The candidate will be afforded 2 minutes for the introduction, each question, and the closing. We will go in order of placement on the ballot, which is as follows: Edward J. Ray, Claire Bud Utter, Mike Flaherty, and TJ Yerkey. We will start in this order for the introduction and move to the second person, third, and so on as we proceed through the questions. Please note, we're planning about 2 hours for this event. Following the prepared questions and prior to closing remarks, we will provide a time for audience members to submit their questions. Those interested in submitting a question may do so through the village website via our online form, or send a message to stephanie.miller@mcfarland.wi.us. We will evaluate the question for appropriateness prior to asking and provide each candidate an opportunity to answer. Gentlemen, any questions before we get started?
No, sir. Thank you, Joe.
Right. Okay, we're going to begin with introductions, starting with Edward, then Mike, and TJ. Please provide an introduction. Tell us about yourself, background, education, and other items of relevance to get to know you better. Edward, you're up.
Good morning, McFarland. Good morning, everyone. Hi, as Joe mentioned, I am Edward Ray. I am one of the trustees that currently sits on the village board. I was appointed last April, and it has been an amazing journey. A little bit about myself. So I was born in Monrovia, Liberia. My parents, through their resiliency, brought me to the US and my siblings at the age of 8. Lived in Georgia, lived in North Carolina, eventually went off to college from an undergraduate at St. Cloud State University, where I met my amazing wife, and we eventually relocated to North Carolina for my master's. Stayed there for 2 years, and in 2018, relocated to Wisconsin, ultimately building in McFarland in 2019. I am honored to represent the village of McFarland. In my professional life, I am a digital health consultant, very big on population health, social determinant of health, and helping healthcare organizations, helping payers utilize technology to really give their patients and members of the community a clear picture of what their care looks like, and of course, helping physicians take better care of their patients. Again, it's my wife and I. We have 2 dogs. We have a beagle named Dubs and a golden retriever named Aspen. Love them, and we are honored to be part of this community and look forward to representing all of you in McFarland. Thank you.
Thanks, Edward. Mike, you're next.
Hi, I'm Mike Flaherty. I too am on the village board with Ed, who I'm just delighted to serve with. It's a great group. I was on the board 10 years ago, did the whole 2 years, but decided not to run again just because it took too much time. I vowed that when I retired, I would run again, and here I am. So I owned a small public relations company doing mostly public policy stuff, healthcare, energy, helping organizations strategize, communicate, and helping leaders lead. prior to that, I was a journalist. I worked in Washington, D.C. I don't want to date myself, but let's just say I covered Ronald Reagan at the White House. I know. And then I was at the State Journal for 10 years, covering business and then politics and government. So I've been around government most of my life, and I find it fascinating. Like Ed said, it's always an education, and it's a privilege to be able to serve. So I want to thank you, Joe, and thank Matt, the village, for doing this, and for all those who are out there listening. I'm grateful that you're participating in this. It's important, and we have a lot going on, and I'm looking forward to the next 2 years should I win re-election. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I'm married and I have 3 adult children, been in McFarland for 30 years. So I've seen the village change a great deal and looking forward to the changes going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. TJ, here.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yes, my name is TJ Yerkey, and with everyone's support in this community, I will join the village board this spring, hopefully. Yeah, I am originally from South Dakota, went and pursued an education there in journalism, actually, and political science. I had, the desire to become a political journalist. That was my background, my overall goal in life at the time. Ended up with a phenomenal position, moved up to North Dakota to cover state and national politics as a political reporter out of Bismarck, capital there. And that's where I met my wonderful wife, Megan, who is a paralegal in the legal world. In 2017, then we got married and decided we wanted to try something different, try something new. My mother grew up in Wisconsin, and we landed in Madison area, which we absolutely loved beforehand and love even more now that we've been here for many years now. In 2020, had the opportunity to purchase a home just off of, or on Bremer Road, rather, so on the west side of the village, which we've absolutely come to love and adore, both our home, our neighborhood, and this community as a whole. I'll speak to this morning and afternoon, I'll probably speak quite a bit about my journalism experience. I think this was a tipping point for me and what led me here today. So just wanted to throw that out. Common piece you may hear from me, but our home consists of my wife and I and our dog Chloe, who's a little chunky Chihuahua that we love dearly. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to this broadcast, and thank everyone for putting this together, the Communications and Technology Department, and Joe for being here and hosting, and I just look forward to engaging more with the community.
Great, thank you, TJ. All right, we're going to move on to our first question, starting with Mike, then TJ, then Edward. Question number 1 is, what interested you about running for a local office? Mike, go ahead.
Well, I've always been like TJ. I was a political reporter, and then I was I did public policy, PR, and communications for many years. And I've always been fascinated by government and how it works and how well it actually works. And I just saw it as my role, my duty really as a citizen to volunteer my time and do what I can to help build the community going forward. I have 3 kids, and they were all raised in McFarland schools. It was a great experience. And I'd like to do what we can to help the next generation have as great of experience as my kids did as we grow. And we're going to talk about this later, but McFarland's almost twice the size it was when we moved here. And it's projected to grow we've grown past what we were projected to grow. And that presents some challenges, but it also presents some great opportunities. And that's why I'm running for re-election, because we've just got a lot on the table. It's been a really good, active board, and I think we've got a lot going on that I'd like to help see through. That's why I'm here.
Thanks, Mike. TJ, we'll move on to you.
So I think as we go about this forum, you may see some common parallels between Mike and I. So I'm excited to hear more from Mike as well in terms of his background and experiences. But looking at my journalism experience, education background, one thing I go to quite a bit and how we got here today and my interest in running for local office. As a political reporter, our job was to ask elected officials questions, right? Get into the nitty gritty, the details about what's going on, in a legislative proposal with the city ordinance, with different behind the scenes things. And I found elected officials would often ask me, well, why do you care? Why is that important? Why would your readers want to know why that's important or want to know more about that? And besides telling them that it was my job, I told them that every small or large decision can have a resounding impact on any one person or people or community as a whole. Whether it's a word change or something very insignificant to a lot of people, can have resounding effects and impacts. And I think it's incredibly important to be involved in the local government, because there's such great opportunity and tremendous value in being at the table and being someone that can bring a group of people together and look at those fine details and see where we can grow them, those opportunities, those details, to something bigger and better that serves this community as a whole. In addition to that, I've been involved in different nonprofit organizations. I've been an advocate at the local, state, and federal level, advocating for different policies. So I've been involved in this process in a bunch of different ways, from different perspectives. And I just really want to immerse myself and use my experiences to the benefit of McFarland.
Great. Thank you, TJ. Edward?
Yeah, so what interests me about running for local office? It's funny, right? If you look at my resume and my experience, I've always been a servant leader. So some of you know I am a veteran. I also volunteer and mentor kids with incarcerated parents or kids who've had parents go through the criminal justice system. I won't say I aspired to run for local office, but I want to leave this world a better place than I met it. I am where I am today because of the sacrifices of people that came before me, things they did, standing up in those tough moments, advocating for those that may not look like them, or just doing the right thing. And so through all of my experiences, whether it's professionally, personally, I always want to leave my environment, my ecosystem, a better place. And I recognize that I could either be a part of the solution or I could be part of the problem. And so putting all of that together, I decided, you know what, this is my community. I love where I live. I want to be a voice for people. I want to be a bridge for all kinds of people. I want to represent everyone. I want this to be a better place, not just for myself, but for those who come after me. And that is why I stepped up to the plate last April and ultimately made the decision to have my first election or run for my first, I guess, officially run. And so I'm honored, I'm privileged, I'm excited for it. And I want to represent the village of McFarland and all of the people here proudly and with honor.
Great. Thank you, Edward. All right, we're going to move on to question number 2. Order is Mike, TJ, and Edward. What excites you the most about wanting to join the village board as a trustee? Mike, go ahead.
Well, I think the biggest challenge right now is we're growing, and we're a different community than we were 30 years ago. And as we grow, like TJ said and Ed said, the decisions we make now are going to impact the village forever. So the tendency in government is to react to the problems that they have before them. And that's certainly understandable and is something government does do and should do. But planning and having a vision for what it should look like 30 years from now really is hard work. It can be expensive because you really want to do it right. You want to hire consultants, which we've done. We want to have plans in place, and then we can debate those plans. But if we don't have a plan and we don't have a vision, we're just reacting. So the biggest challenge we face is growth, how we grow. We're not a very diverse community. How do we grow in a way that makes us more diverse? How do we, we're only growing to the east and the land is fairly expensive. So how do we have affordable housing for the people who work in McFarland, the people who work at Angelo's and the teachers who teach in our schools? They need and deserve great places to live. And we need to help make that happen. The marketplace is a wonderful place. I'm a strong capitalist. I was a capitalist owning my own business, but there's limits to what it can do. for things like affordable housing. So government business partnership is absolutely essential in areas like this. And we will make some missteps. But again, it's a good board. I'm looking forward to serving on it and meeting that challenge with Ed and hopefully with TJ, and assuming we get elected. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. TJ, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. I think it comes down to opportunities for, what excites me most about joining the village board as a trustee. Kind of going off of what Mike just said, we have a lot of exciting studies, plans, projects underway, right? We have a phenomenal public safety center that's going up. That's going to be, it's already innovative and bringing on new ideas and opportunities in the village and elsewhere as well. So I see opportunities for me to bring my education, experiences, and enthusiasm to really help shape and grow our village for years to come. One of the main impetus for me running was the East Side Neighborhood Growth Plan. Right now, as many may know, we've kicked off, the village has kicked off a consultant to study over the next year, how do we expand and grow to the east? And one of the biggest things I want to make sure our village does, and the village board does, is we do it strategically and we do it sustainably, right? We bring the people to the table, we bring the businesses, the organizations, everyone involved over the next year, and then moving ahead so that we develop it in a way that we bring affordable housing online, true affordable housing online, as I like to say. And we reach out and help our business sector within McFarland grow and expand, and then bring in new and diverse opportunities for the village into that space. So there's so many opportunities taking place right now, right? Like we're going to study and look at retooling the downtown area, at least around the municipal center. We have a new soccer complex going on the east side. We have pickleball courts that we're going to hopefully put in on the north side, right? There's so many things going on that I want to help bring those ideas out. I want to make sure we engage the community. I want to make sure we do it again in a strategic and sustainable way.
Thank you, TJ. Edward?
So what excites me? In terms of our strategy plan and long-term growth and how we're sustainable with that, I have the utmost trust in Carolyn's leadership as well as Matt's leadership. We, as a board, and Mike can attest to that, have spent countless hours making sure that we are very intentional in how we grow, but also that we do so that represents what the people of McFarland are saying. That said, what excites me the most about this village board is the human side of it. I have lived in a lot of small communities. I have lived in different states. And it's very rare, as an example, where you hear a police chief or a police department talk about DE&I. Our leadership from the administration level, our leadership from the board level, this community has just all came around and just bonded and formed this beautiful thing. And that makes me super excited, because it's very rare where you see leaders speak up to racial injustice without trying to play a political side to it or spin the narrative. It excites me to see everyone come together and say, when something is wrong, it's wrong. When there's an opportunity, how do we fix that, rather than trying to put the fingers and blame one another for those issues? That is very important to me, because to be a leader, you have to be accountable for your actions, but also you have to empower those who are in charge. And so it excites me that we have this awesome board, this board that truly understands what the village needs. And when we don't, willing to reach out to the community and say, hey, this is what we're working on. How do you feel about this? Getting those feedback. And so I'm honored to be part of that. And I want to be part of that as we continue to move forward and keep that same energy, where we are all moving in unison as one body versus opposing forces. And that's what excites me about joining the board right now.
Thank you, Edward. All right, moving on to question number 3. We'll start with TJ. What are some things you would like to change or at least see done differently as a member of the village board?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I think that the village board actually has made some phenomenal improvements, especially internally, just over the past year and a half. looking at updating some policies, restructuring some things, and kind of creating an internal culture really that's, I think going to help both internally and externally for the community as a whole. So I'm really excited to see those change take effect this spring, and think it's going to create some great opportunities and some great streamlined processes. Kind of going off of what Ed just said a little bit in terms of bringing this community forward as a whole. One thing I'm really interested in and want to see if there's opportunities and ways to do this is look at any potential gaps, right? And look at figuring out how we bring together not just village services, but nonprofit organizations, our business leaders and business community, individuals and different groups and stakeholders, and see if there's different ways we can make sure we're leveraging the different ideas and experiences of our community members who want to be more involved and who want to lend their voice to everyday decisions that the village is making. I think there's great opportunity there, and I think we can develop some really cool ways to make sure we do that. And the other thing I think we can do is we can look at how we're approaching our community and economic development. I know we're growing that department, which I'm really excited for to see. And I think there's ways we can use existing infrastructure to bolster what we're doing on that community and economic development side.
TJ, Edward, you're up.
So one thing, I guess, an issue that I brought up several times to the body is how we manage our growth, and also how do we bring in more commercial developments? How do we make our downtown more vibrant? If we look at our neighborhood communities like Monona and your Sun Prairies, your Cottage Grove, they all have a downtown identity. They have a vibrant downtown. And we have an opportunity there, and we know we are limited by our the land. And so as a board, how do we rethink that? Of course, we're bringing in consultants to help with that planning. But I think and I call it a low-hanging fruit, because the opportunity there is we have people within our community who are going outside of McFarland for services that I think we could provide within McFarland. And so how do we utilize our TIF districts? How do we utilize our TIF financing, our TIP dollars, I should say, to attract those businesses and bring them to McFarland, and so that the members of our community can really benefit from that. And so where I think we've dropped the ball as a board, and most people who know me, I am not going to bite my tongue on things. I think that's where we need to focus. We need to figure out how we can bring more commercial developments to McFarland to support the members of our community. That would bring in more jobs, and that would also help make this community a little bit more vibrant.
Thank you, Edward. Mike?
Well, I agree with Ed. It's the challenge is we're actually 3 downtowns. The original downtown is where the rail crossing was, where the McFarland House is now. And that's all surrounded by residential development that we'd either have to buy and knock down and expand there. Then it moved to Farwell Street with the shopping center, but there's also a lot of residential there that's mixed in with that 1950s, 1960s downtown. And then everything moved to the highway when the bank moved out there. That's where the grocery store moved. It used to be where the hardware store is now. So we've kind of grown. I don't think there was any one person who dropped the ball. It was, I won't even say a lack of planning, because business moves to where transportation is. And when the highway expanded to 4 lanes, a couple of boards ago, they did a brilliant job of creating these TIF districts. So all that you see coming into McFarland on either side is industrial that was created by TIF districts for the very purpose Ed is talking about. Our other zoned industrial is way out on the east side, almost to highway, well, not highway end, but that's where the new industrial growth is going to go. The other opportunity we have is south of McFarland, which is now Town of Dunn. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that agreement not to grow south of the Yahara ends in 2025. And that's really where the next growth will occur. But it's going to still look fairly broken up, with still the old downtown, Farwell Street, and then the strip along 51. I'm open to any ideas that people have about coordinated growth and how to do this well. and have a vision so that it looks attractive, that it's a place where people want to work and live. But we got to work with what we have, and I think we can. So there's a lot going on, and I agree with Ed on all accounts. Looking forward to see what that's going to look like and be part of it.
Thanks, Mike. All right, we're going to move on to question number 4, starting with Edward. What are your top 3 priorities if elected into this position?
This is probably the one question I'm super excited about. Those of you who know me know, number 1, DE&I, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think there's a bit of a misconception what people think DE&I is. Sometimes, for those who are not educated in the subject, it's a black and white thing, and it's beyond that. DE&I is not. It's, yes, race is a part of it, but you look at, for me as a veteran, how do we have services to support the veterans? For the older community, if grandma can't take the trash can out because of whatever disability, do we have resources to support her? What are our hiring practices? How are we handling the racial issue? So DE&I is just not a black and white thing. And I think as a village, we've taken some of the right steps in that direction. We brought in the consultants. We went from a subcommittee and eventually to a committee. So that's number 1. Number 2 is sustainable growth, right? We know that McFarland is growing. And so one thing I mentioned earlier was, how do we bring in resources, businesses to support that growth? And how do we do so in a way that is sustainable and good for our environment? And that's a tricky slope. And so we also, as we look to grow, we need to bring in people who excel, who are experts in those areas, to help us identify how we can support the growth of McFarland. And then the last thing being community partnership and communication. So we are not here to represent ourselves. We're here to represent the people of McFarland. And communication is forever going to be a complex issue. As Mike knows, who is a PR expert, it's not, you can always put a Facebook post out there, but you have to be a little bit more strategic in how you go about it and how you engage people. We're always going to have a small population, or I don't want to say a sample population that is always going to be engaged. But how do we reach those that may not be as active? And how do we get them involved? Because we want to get all of the voices and not just the same voices over and over again. And so working with the board, working with various subcommittees, working with the administration to say, hey, how do we expand our reach? And how do we get those who may not have access to some of the means of communication to be aware of things? And again, it's not an easy solution. There's not a magic wand you can flip around to solve that, but ultimately it's something we have to be committed to, because again, we don't represent ourselves, we represent the people of McFarland, and that means all the people of McFarland.
Thank you, Edward. Mike, you're up.
Yeah, I'll just take off on what Ed said. Sustainability to me means more than solar. It means communities that are designed for people instead of cars. Most of our modern American cities were designed for cars. And if you are a senior citizen living near the lake, you take your life in your hands going across Highway 51. You literally take your life in your hands. And that's not an indictment, that's just how the planning has gone. But how do we create a community that's walkable and livable and environmentally friendly? That's my idea of sustainability, in addition to just energy. The board did a great job sticking to its guns. The cost went up for everybody, but we wanted that public safety center to be 0 net energy use, and we did it. When that thing comes on, we may be a net energy producer from that building. Very exciting. And I think one thing that excites me about this board is we're all on the same page on that. Walkability is difficult, and it's going to take a lot of planning and a lot of effort. And like Ed said, there's no magic wand. We can suddenly turn Highway 51 into a bike path. But what can we do? Can we build a bridge over it? Can we, and there's plans to that effect as well. My second, and also on Ed's point, is community engagement. And as TJ knows, covering government, it's always an issue. Getting people involved in government, getting them to participate. It's not unusual to have legislative hearings with nobody at them. I've been in committee hearings in Congress when there's just lobbyists. You rarely see just average people coming in and saying, I'm going to weigh in on this issue. The newspaper industry is struggling. Our own little community newspaper is now representing 3 communities, and I don't know how Madeline does it to try to cover 3 communities at once, but that used to be the community forum, which we exchanged ideas. And my third is that excites me is growth, and my time is up, and I will yield back.
Thank you, Mike. TJ, your turn.
Yeah, so first priority, for the village board and getting on it is, or I said one of anyway, so strategic and sustainable development. I think I can echo Ed and Mike a little bit. And it's, the east side, of course, is I'm very excited about, but I agree, our downtown sector, our core downtown, the identity of most communities, and then the connection between 51 and downtown Farwell Street. The village underwent some consulting work years ago on the downtown corridor on Farwell Street, looking at different options and opportunities. And I think we're really in a position as a village and village board to look at those areas more holistically and see what more we can do and offer this community. So we get to more strategic, sustainable methods of transportation, like the walkability, right? We want a better walkability score in this community and those sorts of things. So strategic, sustainable planning, certainly. I think, incorporating different recommendations from the DEI audit, that is supposed to lapse in June of this year. And we've already started to see some great recommendations and ideas coming out of that through the different community engagement, SWOT analysis that they've been doing. I think we're going to see some really good things. And I think there's some phenomenal opportunities to really bring that and ingrain it into McFarland. So we're at the benefit of everybody, all ages, demographics, et cetera. So I think bringing that into regular decision-making and making sure there aren't any blind spots is going to be a phenomenal opportunity for us at the village board level. And then I got to be the third one to say it, community engagement. We can't not say it, right? I think the biggest strength our village has is our people, right? Our business owners, our residents, our teachers, everyone in this village. And we want to make sure and need to make sure that they don't even, not only do they understand what's going on, but they have that opportunity and know where they can leverage their voices.
Hey, Joe, if you don't mind, I know I used up my time, but I wanted to add one thing. And I know that the three of us probably agree on this, but our greatest assets are school system. And they're actually a much larger geographic area than the village itself, and they have resources. So I'm on the joint school village board committee, and I'd really looking forward to doing more with them in cooperation with them, because I think together we can do a lot more. So that would be one thing I think we should address and will. Sorry about that. Thanks, guys, for your understanding.
No, well said, Mike.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, TJ. All right, question number 5. We're going to start with Mike on this one. How do you feel about the pace of growth within our community in comparison to the services we provide?
Well, I'm happy with it. We went through a period of no growth, and and I was on the board at that time after the Great Recession. So we were very conscientious about keeping the tax levy flat, not doing anything to raise taxes. We cut a couple services so that it wouldn't impact property tax bills. We were very conscientious that when people were losing their jobs, they weren't getting an increased tax bill at that time. Since then, we've been growing faster than projected, and that presents challenges, but also, as TJ and Ed said, great opportunities. What was the question again?
How do you feel about the pace of growth?
Pace of growth. Yeah, so when the boundary agreement with Town of Dunn expires in 2025, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like, whether Town of Dunn wants to continue it. And for those of you guys at home, this was probably 10, 15 years ago. Town of Dunn didn't want any growth. They didn't want McFarland expanding into their township. So we signed a deal, and I wasn't part of that deal, but for good or bad, we don't grow south of the O'Hara. That was the agreement we had. And all of our growth then would have to go east. Madison's to the north and the lake is obviously to the west. So the only way we can go is east. And the developers have done a terrific job building beautiful subdivisions, and at a pace that's been well planned and well thought out. And when the agreement expires south, that'll change the nature of both the pace and the type of growth we have. To Ed's point, it's a great opportunity for commercial development. It's a great, I don't know if any of it's zoned industrial, but there may be some potential there off the highway a little bit, so people aren't looking at factories when they leave town. But I think it's been recent. It's a little faster. It's certainly faster than it was 10 years ago. And I'm happy with the pace.
Thank you, Mike. TJ?
Yeah, I think the village has been on pace for what we can do and what we've been able to do. When we talk about growth, of course, having the space to be able to grow certainly is something that has been addressed or discussed and addressed, and we're going to be moving forward here. And to Mike's earlier point about the joint village school board committee and discussions, one thing that leaped out at me at the end of last year was the note or the discussion about the fact that we are looking to fill positions in our school district, but we can't because as soon as someone has a job offer, they look for a home, an affordable home in our village. And they can't take the offer because they want to live here and work here, but they just couldn't. And so we have so many different chess pieces that are moving and coming online, both now and in the next couple of years, which is going to be critical pieces of what the village board addresses just in the next year or 2 years. That we're going to see some phenomenal growth opportunities, right? We're going to be able to truly address that affordable housing piece in the open space that we're going to be able to develop. And so I think we're going to start seeing just those different opportunities to strategically, sustainably grow, in a way that we haven't been able to, simply, again, because of the space. But I think in terms of community services and everything, the village staff, have been working diligently day in and day out to make sure that, amenities and opportunities are afforded for everybody and available for everybody in this village. And certainly, like anything, there's always opportunity to grow and change and make different decisions. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to be here today and hopefully join the board to be part of that.
Thank you, TJ. Edward?
Yeah, so I think right now McFarland's community, and I'm sure Matt will fact check me on this, I think we sit about roughly 9,000 people, which is an increase from, I think, 2010. We were at like 7,800, 7,700. So for a place that's under 5 square miles, that's a significant growth, right? And so we know what attracts people to McFarland. We have an amazing school system. We have great staff there. And now with Aaron, we have great leadership. What do we do with all the increase? What do we do about the young couples that are moving here? What do we do about the teachers, as TJ mentioned, that want to support the next generation in our community, but can't really afford to live anywhere here? And I don't think that's exclusive to McFarland. I think that's across the nation. But we as McFarland can't be leaders in different things. Right now, if we look at the Public Safety Center, I would say that we are one of the leaders in that. We literally help build a net zero building. And part of that factors into our growth, right? We realized we had a need. We have this community center downtown that we needed to reallocate our staff somewhere new. And so bringing them to this area to support the East Side growth, I would say the Village Board has been very intentional and strategic in how we support our growth. And I think even in recent years, it's been more proactive than a reactive approach. And so as we continue to grow as a village, I think we need to, again, try to re-envision what it looks like to have commercial resources that support that growth. And again, that may be coming out with tricky, morally, but ethical ways to attract new commercial developments that people in McFarland can be proud of, places that people can take their families, and places that we all can be proud of. And so I'm excited for our growth. I am a byproduct of that growth. I came here because of the school system. I came here because of the community. And so I look forward to continue to support that growth, and I accept that growth because it means that we at McFarland are doing something good, and this is a place people are proud to live in.
Thank you, Edward. All right, moving on to question number 6. I'm going to start with Mike again. How do you plan to involve residents within the decision-making process?
Well, we've all touched on that, and I think our communications department works their tails off. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different ways we send information out and try to engage communications. I'll just go over them real quickly. There's emails, there's email newsletter. The website's really comprehensive. We did that. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We have a hard copy newsletter that goes to residents. We have a digital newsletter that goes out. We do polling through Polco, and they all are effective in their own way. The trick is to get people involved in it. You can send communications out, but communications has to be two-way, and if people don't respond or if they're not using it, it's not as effective as it could be. And that's the challenge everybody has. Marketing, all organizations have the same challenge. The school has the same challenge. So it's something we're going to be tackling in the next 2 years. Our communications committee really kind of became a technology committee. So we're in the process of rethinking what that committee should look like. We actually don't have a communications committee. Well, that'll end in April. And then I'd like to have a discussion with the board about how we, among ourselves, think this through with Stephanie's expertise, with Matt, on new ways. As I mentioned earlier, the newspaper industry, my father was a community newspaper editor and publisher. And when he died at age 60, I took over for a year. So I do have experience with community newspapers, and it's very sad that they're not. And I think if Madeline's on the line for the McFarland Herald Thistle, I don't think she'd disagree. More resources in our local newspaper that just isn't there. We're gonna have to rethink that too. So it's a challenge, and I think we're all up to it. I think we all recognize the problem, and that's half the battle. And my time is up. So it's a long conversation, and it's an interesting one, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mike. TJ?
Yeah, this is a great question. A lot of what Mike just said, I certainly agree with. One of the biggest things, we need to figure out is how do we reach our residents, right? There's so many different avenues, as Mike just illustrated, that the village is putting out content and information and details about where our community can get involved, our residents can get involved. The question I'm really interested in is what are the barriers that are preventing our community residents from getting involved? Now, we know we have families, right? Couples with children. We have people with different disabilities and abilities, and who may or may not have those technologies and capacity to see different mediums that content is going out in or on. So the first thing I think we need to do is understand, like, what are the limitations or barriers that are preventing our community from getting involved, and how can we use that as an opportunity to recraft it and rethink how we're communicating to our community, right? One of the things, I'd love to do as a village board member right now, my campaign page, TJ Yerkey for McFarland Village Board, just shift that around and make that a Trustee Yerkey page, right? And I think it's absolutely wonderful when a community member can throw up, put up a story, right? Share a link of whatever it may be, right? It could be something that their brother and sister in Montana in their community is doing that's really unique or innovative. And, for a village resident to quickly throw something like that onto my page and say, hey, what about this? Is this something we could do or is viable here in McFarland, right? And making it so much easier for our community to engage with one another in the village board specifically. So looking at those social media platforms as a village board member myself, and then just continuing to communicate and share information as we talk to community members.
Great. Thank you, TJ. Edward?
So we all know the saying bad news travels faster than good news, right? And in the age of technology, misinformation travels, I would argue, even faster. And so when we talk about getting our residents involved, you have to look at it in two ways. One, from a proactive. So as we are making big decisions, we know that a lot of times we will have town halls, but how do we utilize all of our platforms? And I would say Stephanie and her team do an amazing job at that. Um, but we're always not going to reach everyone. And so it is not something you get discouraged about because we can try it. And the worst thing we do is say, okay, well, we're going to quit because we're not reaching. I think the challenge is we continue to hold ourselves accountable and rethink the ways that how we can reach new people. And then there is the reactive. And I think that we excel very well. There have been times where we have dropped the ball. I am here because of one of those situations where communications wasn't at the level that I would say this village should be held to. Um, but those are all in the past. And as we move forward, I think it's very important we sit down with the leaders of our community, we sit down with the members of our community and have their input on these big decisions that are going to impact their taxes, that's going to impact their community, that's going to impact their day of life. And I think when you can do that, you kind of lessen the blow for misinformation. And I think that's important. And the village has been impeccable with that recently. And I hope we continue. I urge Stephanie and her team to continue to do the good work that they're doing and making sure that as we have all of these events, as we have these different milestones or accomplishment, good, bad news, that we continue to have conversation, we continue to throw things out there to our community, and of course, find new ways to reach those who may be out of touch. So,
Thank you, Edward. All right, moving on. Next question. We're going to start with TJ. What does public service mean to you?
Yeah, this is always a great question. And I like to flip that around. Instead of public service, I look at it as service to the public and how we define service specifically, right? Talking about communicating with the community, engaging with the community, understanding their concerns, bringing their ideas to the village board, and bringing their ideas and seeing them through if they're feasible and possible, right? And being a champion of the community. Those are just more examples of what I think, service to the public is. But in terms, when we look at, my experience and my management style, servant leadership obviously is at the top of what I look at and how I approach my day-to-day work and in working with those around me and serving those around me. And I often will tell people that I won't ask somebody to complete a task if I'm not willing to do it myself. Right. And that's why I'm here today and I'm running for the village board. I want to make sure that I'm helping make those changes that I would otherwise, hope and dream that somebody, an elected official, village board member will do. But I want to be the one to help and bring that online, whatever it may be, and also engage and support our community so that they also are involved as well. But what it comes down to really for me, if we boil it all down to what public service means to me, it's really what village trustees do in between meetings every 2 weeks, right? The village board is going to meet beginning of the spring on Tuesdays. The question to me is, what do I do as a village trustee from Tuesday to Tuesday, 2 weeks from then? And how do I engage and work with and bring our community online and involved in our decision making? And that to me, and what comes with that is what public service is.
Thank you, TJ. Edward, you're up.
yeah, I mentioned earlier that one of my goals is I want to leave this world a better place than I met it. And I don't say that lightly. I joined the military because I wanted to give back to a country that's given me everything. I donate my time to those less fortunate than me because I know what it's like to not have stuff. Public service is committing yourself to an action, a commitment that ultimately you reap no benefit from. It's truly being that servant leader where your only objective is to pay for the kindness you've received or to simply just pay for kindness. And so when I think of public service, there are I won't say there are very few things, but there are a small list of things that I fully commit my time to, because I am a very busy person, and public service probably sits at the top of that. Between a full-time job, between my commitment to the village, everything outside of that has to do with giving back to my community and making this world a better place. And I think when we have a board that embodies that, we truly will make this world a better place. And so I'm not going to spend much time on this. If anybody wants to know about my commitment, I encourage you to reach out to me. We can have coffee. I'm an open book. We can go down that road. But be selfless in what you do and make this world a better place. And I'm going to leave it at that.
You, Edward? Mike?
So when I was a kid, again, I'm dating myself. I'll never forget John F. Kennedy's speech about asking not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I don't even think of it as public service. I think of it as community service, because we're part of a community. And people who don't feel that they're part of a community or don't feel they owe anything back to the community, we're seeing a lot of that in society today. And it breaks my heart. It doesn't mean we can't have disagreements and strong disagreements, but there's an old cliche, and you were talking about misinformation and lies in journalism. I think it's to Mark Twain, was a lie can travel around the earth before the truth has time to tie its shoes. And what I see in McFarland is really a lack of that anger and misinformation and deliberate disruption, if I may. We've had great school board meetings. Some schools just have all this rancor and hate. Some citizens come in and just want to wreck everything, and they aren't respectful. In McFarland, we've seen none of that. I haven't gotten one nasty email in all the time that I've served, and that it makes me want to continue to give back and be part of this and give as much as I can. And now I finally have the time to do it, and I'm happy to participate. So it means being part of a community, and that's why I value public service. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mike. All right, next question. This will be the last question before any audience questions, if we have them. And it's a big one. We'll start with Edward. Why should we vote for you?
Oh, I'm just joking. No. So I came here to represent. When I originally got appointed, I made the comment that I want to be a person that represents all of McFarland. And I'm even going to make this a bit controversial and say, even those who political views are outside of mine, even those, whoever you are, no matter what you do, I want to represent you. I want to make sure your voice are heard. And I want to make sure that we as a village have synergy. I want to make sure that when we grow, the kids of this community live in a place that they're proud of. I want to make sure that we have the resources to support the next generation. I want to make sure that McFarland is an amazing place to live. And I want to be someone who this community looks at and says, he always had our back and he always took time to listen. And so if that's someone you want, if you want someone who cares, if you want someone who is passionate about community advocacy, if you want someone who truly is a servant leader, then I truly believe I'm a candidate for you, because I may not always have the answer, but I most certainly have the tools and the ability to go and find those answers. And so I'm excited to be part of the board. I look forward to being part of the board, and I look forward to representing all of McFarland.
Thank you, Edward. Mike, you're up.
Well, my wife just texted that I forgot to mention that we also have a cat. So that's one reason to vote for me, I guess. So TJ, Ed, and I all have pets, and so that's number one, apparently. Full disclosure here, I'm voting for Ed and TJ. I just really like what I'm hearing here, so that's an endorsement. And as for why people should vote for me, I'm open. I love interacting with people, learning their stories, learning their challenges, their ideas. I don't have a firm vision of what I want to see happen in the village. I'm open to being collaborative because that's what I value most. We have a great village administration. They do a professional job. They're accessible and thoughtful. We don't have a lot of programming. We have a very basic village government. So we don't run recreation programs. We don't do housing or social programs. So as we grow, those are going to be things, especially as we consider diversity and inclusion and engaging people. Do we want a more activist, engaged village government than one that, does the basics, streets, roads, things like that? And I want to be part of that discussion. And that's why I'd like people to vote for me and re-elect me to the board.
Thank you, Mike. TJ.
Yeah, thank you. Mike, thank you for that wonderful endorsement. Really appreciate that. As the newbie, so to speak, on this forum anyway, a little bit different, of course, from Ed and Mike, but I think the big thing for why I hope our community votes for me and supports me this spring is number one, I'm invested, right? Like so many others watching right now, and hopefully in the future on the recorded copy, right? We bought our home specifically, one, because it was affordable at the time, but two, and more importantly, because of our school district and the size and opportunities in this community. We saw some great opportunities for us as a couple and ways that we can, give back and get involved. And so I'm invested, we're invested, we're not going anywhere. And I want to help shape and grow McFarland with everybody else on this call watching, right? I don't see us going anywhere. And so I think I know I want to bring my experiences to the table and make sure that, we grow again, strategically and sustainably. Also, why I hope folks will vote for me. My background lends itself, I think, very well to this board and this community. When we talk about engagement, collaboration is a term that comes up a lot. How do we collaborate and bring everyone around the table and leverage their voices, their ideas, their priorities? I've done that. I want to continue to do that. I think I can do that well working with the village trustees. And I want to do that with the community as a whole and bring everyone together so we can really bring some really cool, great ideas to fruition here in the village moving ahead.
Thank you, TJ. Matt, do we have any audience questions?
We do not.
All right, thank you. We are going to move on to closing statements, final remarks, any other topics of interest, other pets we forgot to mention. Mike, we're going to start with you.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again, Joe, and the chamber, Matt and Stephanie, the village, for putting this on. When I mentioned the communications outlets, for some reason I forgot to mention our cable station, which we're on right now. So thank you for that. And that's obviously an important tool. It's an exciting time in McFarland. It's growing. It's going to continue to grow. That's going to give us a lot of opportunities to continue to build an infrastructure in a future that our children can be proud of and their children's children can be proud of, and see McFarland as a wonderful place to live, to work, send kids to schools. And I'm just optimistic. We're redoing the community festival, and that's one of the things that really brings us together. So most everyone who lives in McFarland works somewhere else. And that's part of we are a commuter village. So what can we do to bring people together and invest in the village we have? A festival is a wonderful way to do that. Obviously, it was shut down during COVID. It's been struggling, and I want to really see that come to fruition and be something greater. We're building a community center, or at least we hope to. It's on the planning. So when the fire department and police department vacate the current village hall, we want to create a community center there close the street and turn it into a campus area, which is really the old Village Green. And that'll be exciting because it's something that brings us together. The library is our greatest village asset. In addition to our schools, that library is extremely well utilized. People come and go, the children go there to read and go to story time and do activities. And that's the kind of thing that makes community strong, gets us all talking to each other, gets us out of our silos and interacting. And it's a great time to be on the board, and I'm looking forward to it should I get reelected. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. TJ, you're up.
Yeah, I have to echo the thank yous, right? Joe, really appreciate you moderating today. Matt and communications department always does a great job, putting these things together. And of course, making sure they're recorded and posted online for future use. I think that's a critical piece, especially as we talk about community engagement and getting folks to understand who we are, what we're doing, et cetera. I mistakenly did not mention that, I work for the Department of Workforce Development, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. I'm our communications and policy advisor. So I just wanted to get that out there. Do a lot of communications work for our division statewide, internally and externally. Great position, great time to be there right now for me. But, I think, as we talked about today, we have so many opportunities, and these chess pieces I alluded to earlier, there's a lot of planning, a lot of consultants, right, are getting into gear to look over the next year how we can grow and do it in a way that makes sense, right, strategically, sustainably, et cetera, to bring, affordable housing online, to bring that commercial development, really help grow us in a way that we want to see it. So it's really exciting. And I'm just really looking forward to and hope to have the opportunity to serve this village on the village board and be able to give back and help figure out where we leverage, ideas, how we bring everyone together. I have some great ideas. I mentioned some today. I have many others and would love to speak more with anybody who wants to sit down and chat. But, we're at an incredible juncture, I think, as a village in terms of our size, resources, where we're going. And there's some really cool things coming down the pipeline I want to be involved with. So really appreciate this opportunity and hope to have the village's support on Tuesday, April 5th.
Thank you, TJ. Edward?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what everyone says. Thank you to staff. Thank you for everyone to help facilitate and organize this. One question that I really struggle with when people ask me is like, where are you from? Right. And it's like, do I say I was born in Africa? Do I say I'm from Georgia? Do I say I'm from North Carolina? Do I say Minnesota? And I mention that because when my wife and I moved here, I remember telling my friends and my family down south that, oh, this is going to be a 2-year thing. We're going to move back. That was almost 4 years ago, over 4 years ago. I consider McFarland my home. And I don't say that lightly. I can pinpoint the moment that I felt at home in this town. And that's when we first moved here. And I went to, I think it was True Value at the time. And there was a guy working there named Richard, who was super kind and super personable. And within 5 minutes, there were 5 other people. We're all having these random conversations about honey-do list. And everybody was super kind. Everyone was super supportive. And it truly felt like a community. And so I bring that up to say, this is my home. Regardless if I'm on the board or just a regular person, I am always going to support McFarland. I'm always going to advocate for the right things in McFarland. Ideally, I will love to do that as a board member. And I look forward to your support in April because we have done amazing things as a board in recent years. And I think under Matt's leadership, under Carolyn's leadership, with the board, with the support of the community and partnership with the community, there's a lot of great things we can do in McFarland to make a place that everyone's proud of. Mike mentioned earlier the school board. I am looking forward to partnering with the school board, continue to partner with them because school board issue is a village board issue. And how do we have, again, we use the word synergy. How do we have synergy to support their initiatives? And how do we get them to support our initiatives? Because when the school's better, the community's better. When the community's better, the school's better. And so, again, I thank you all for your time. I thank you for this amazing dialogue, this conversation. And of course, I look forward to your support April 5th, and thank you all for what you've done.
Thank you, Edward. All right. Thanks, candidates, for attending the forum. Thank you again to the communications and technology staff for broadcasting this event. You can see below, you can access the recording on demand on the YouTube channel or McFarlandCableChannel.com. Reminder again, Tuesday, April 5th is Election Day. Municipal Center, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Absentee voting in person and by mail 2 weeks prior to the election. You can consult mcfarland.wi.us/elections for more information. Thanks again, everyone, for participating. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Good to see you guys.